due to scheduling and Climate Week here, we have the great pleasure of having Radhika Fox, the Assistant Administrator for Water for the EPA, who's going to speak first, and then I'll bring John back to introduce Peter and the rest of the morning keynote. So thank you. Radhika.
Good morning, everybody. Come on now, it's Climate Week. Folks can't do better than that. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I want to thank Columbia Water Center and Science Water for hosting today's forum. As Manu knows, this is my first time attending Rethinking Water. It's a conference I've wanted to come to for a few years now, not only because I'm a Columbia alumni and I love to be on campus, but really I think this conference brings together such a cross-section of water leaders and water innovators who are very, very solutions-oriented. So it's truly wonderful to be with you this morning. And for those of you who know me, you know that one of the things I often say is that this is water's moment. This is truly water's moment. And doesn't it feel that way? Doesn't that feel that way right now? I mean, if you think about it, on the one hand, our water resources are facing mounting threats from higher energy costs to a changing climate to aging infrastructure. We see frequent and more severe storms that are exacerbating already fragile communities. And we know that water stress is forcing difficult decisions from the C-suite to local citizens. And those decisions are only going to get harder and tougher. So, a lot of things to be worried about, right? But if I think about it, there is also so much optimism. That's why I say it's water's moment. I mean, think about the fact that we have tens of thousands of people gathered in New York City for Climate Week, for the Clinton Global Initiative, for the UN General Assembly. And if you compare where we were just a few years ago, water is a thread through those discussions in a way that it hasn't been before, right? It is truly beginning to be a central part of the discussion. And so that is what makes me so optimistic. That's why I think this is water's moment. And I certainly also feel optimistic because, what I see from my seat as the Assistant Administrator for Water is that we are an administration that is prioritizing water investments in a way that we never have before. And one of the things I'll talk about this morning is how my office, the Office of Water, is shepherding $50 billion of investment in water infrastructure, the single largest investment that we've seen as a country. And what I can also say is that, President Biden, he often tells us, look, our administration is focused on building an economy from the bottom up and the middle out. And that water is such a key part of that, building an economy from the middle out, bottom up, middle out. So what I'd like to do this morning is first give you a little bit of an update on how we're doing in the implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure law, how that's going. And then I want to kind of pick up on this theme. And Manu, I love the theme, right, for the conference of how do we bring together the capacities of the public, the private, the nonprofit, the philanthropic sectors to rethink water, and to rethink water together is what I would challenge us on. So, Manu talked a little bit in his opening remarks about the nature of water infrastructure in this country. And what I have seen, being in this role and traveling around the country is just firsthand the incredible stress and strain that people who are water insecure face each and every day. You mentioned Alabama, Manu. I've had the opportunity to travel a couple of times during my time at EPA to Lowndes County, Alabama, and to other communities across the southern Black Belt. And what you see there, here in the United States today, where folks may say you have the greatest infrastructure we do, but we still have more to do, you have children and families who are exposed to raw sewage in the place that they should be safest, which is their own homes. I remember going to Lowndes County, Alabama, and meeting with families and children, and you saw these children who were playing outside, and their toys were literally feet away from a straight pipe from their homes, dumping raw sewage into the communities that to the yard that they're playing in. So the challenges are significant, and this is about humanity. This is about people. It's about infrastructure. It's about dollars flowing to communities, but this is ultimately about people. And so when the Biden-Harris administration had the opportunity to shape the bipartisan infrastructure law, we really prioritized water, and I think we were successful in securing $50 billion investment, drinking water, wastewater, stormwater for communities around the country. And we are about a year and a half into that investment, and what we see is we have about $9 billion out the door through the state SRF program. That's about $5 billion in the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, but also our ongoing investment in the SRF. We've put out over $1 billion through key place-based water programs, the National Estuary Program, some of our geographic programs that invest in sort of iconic water bodies like the Chesapeake Bay, and those programs are all going very well. But what we also said as an office, and I have Wendy Wilkes, who is a senior advisor in my office, and we have Michael Dean, who is the branch chief for the Clean Water SRF program, both from EPA here. We all talked as a team when we received these resources to say, look, this cannot just be about pushing more money through the system, right? We can certainly do that, and we will do that, and we're doing that quite well. But we also have to reform. We have to innovate. We can't just put money through the system to the usual things. How do we use this moment as an opportunity for innovation? And so, some of the things that we've been really focused on is that partnership with states who are our partners in getting so many of the resources out the door. We've worked with about half of the states to refine and change their definition of disadvantaged communities so it better meets the needs of those communities and their borders. We've also been using our resources to, really call for more forward-looking investment. So in my policy guidance to the states around the implementation of these resources, they have to consider things like the federal risk management standards so that we're trying to orient these resources towards more climate-forward projects, and how do we continue to do that? We also, have heard from a lot of folks that there's a lot of unevenness in how these state programs are managed, and so we've been really focused on thinking about the accountability, the transparency, building more common approaches to things like intended use plans, so that, again, we're not just putting money through the system, but we're trying to improve the system as we go. I think the other huge thing that we have focused on as we've been putting these dollars out the door and to communities is to be clear that there are certain communities who have successfully accessed federal infrastructure dollars and many, many, many others who have never had that benefit. If you look at the state revolving loan fund program in this country and you sum them up across the country, it represents, frankly, the 16th largest commercial bank that in the world. That is the size and scale of the SRF program. And you know what? Only 10% of water systems have ever been able to access that as a funding and financing source. So we've got to do better on that. And the president expects us to do better. He is regularly asking us, how are you reaching places like Lowndes County, Alabama? How are we making sure that every rural community in this country, small systems, large systems, really benefit from these dollars? And so what we have been designing over the last year or so is what we call our Water TA program. For those of you who are familiar with EPA programs, for a long time we've had fairly small programs that help communities with, compliance insurance, circuit riders that go out and are helping communities. But, when the president asked us, how are you going to make sure that these water dollars actually get to disadvantaged communities? I actually pulled on my experience so my first job in water was working at the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, right? Very premier utility, thinking about all of the things like climate resilience and adaptation and community benefits, environmental justice. So But when I was at the SFPUC, we had access to all of the best engineers and thinkers and universities and planners as we were doing our work. Now imagine if you could design a program where just a portion of that kind of expertise that well-resourced utilities can access. Imagine if you could provide those to smaller utilities, more distressed utilities. What might we be able to accomplish? And so that's what we have set out to do. We have been piloting this water TA program, and I'm really proud to announce that preview that later this morning at the Clinton Global Initiative, I will be announcing EPA's commitment to helping 1,500 disadvantaged and underserved communities access bipartisan infrastructure dollars. This commitment represents about a $500 million investment in TA providers who will be working with communities all around the country to both identify their water challenges, build plans, design and engineer, and ultimately submit applications to get these resources. We've already been successfully doing that with several communities all around the country through our pilot. And with today's commitment to action, we plan to reach 1,500 communities by 2025. So really, thank you. And the standard that we are holding ourselves to as we do this work is, one, to center how we work on these issues with community and to be very focused on an end result. This is very brass tacks. What we are judging ourselves on as EPA, what we are asking our network of technical assistance providers to do is, have you helped a community develop a plan? Have you helped them write an application? Have you helped them receive these really historic funds? And then are we helping them implement? So that is really the goal. So that's a little bit of an update on what we're up to at EPA. I wanted to now take a couple of minutes to really reflect on this theme, right, of today's conference, Rethinking Water, and thinking about how public, private, nonprofit, academic together can rethink water. So as I think about the work we're trying to move and seed at the EPA, there's really three things that are kind of on my mind around this notion of the new kinds of partnerships and collaborations to rethink water. So the first is really around this technical assistance work, right? If you think about it, many water systems around this country, are struggling. We have a few very high-performing, well-resourced, innovative water systems, but many of them truly are struggling, right? Very fragmented landscape. You all know this. I don't have to tell you that. And what we find ourselves in, and Manu, I think you talked about this in your opening remarks, is that these water systems are very much, these communities really, because it extends past their water, are in a vicious cycle, right? They don't have the rate base to invest. The political leadership finds it challenging to raise rates to invest. There's affordability issues if you do raise rates. And so they find themselves in this vicious cycle. And so one of the things that's my aspiration for this water TA program that I just described is, can you have a pattern interrupt, right, in that cycle and create a virtuous cycle, right? If you can help these communities plan and understand and develop that plan and ideally get these resources, that we know that's not going to be enough, but have we created enough of a pattern interrupt that then puts them on a more virtuous cycle, right? And what do we all collectively do as public, private, nonprofit, academic partners to help these communities? Not to only create the pattern interrupt, but then to build from that to a virtuous cycle of investment and management of water. I think the second thing that's been on my mind as we think about rethinking water, right, is we talk a lot, and I know this group is very focused on public-private partnerships, right? And I'm very curious to hear from all of you about what does a public-private partnerships at this moment look like. EPA alone is investing $100 billion in water and clean energy. Between the IRA and the bill, $100 billion is just the EPA investment. It's incredible. It's an incredible time to be at EPA. So what does that look like? So for example, I have been very focused on the Jackson water crisis. I've been spending a lot of time in Jackson helping that community and that water system. And in addition to the bipartisan infrastructure law money, we were able to secure a $600 million investment to help strengthen and rebuild the Jackson water system. And we are underway in that endeavor. But even after that $600 million, there are going to be ongoing needs, right? So how do we rethink what a partnership looks like between the public, private, nonprofit, academic institutions in a situation like that, where here we are with these huge public investments happening, unlocking value, unlocking opportunity, stabilizing the system. What comes next? I think that's another question that I would ask you, and I think we can map out many communities around the country where something like that is possible. And then the last, sort of rethinking water that I wanted to suggest as sort of you go into the discussions of today is around our regulatory agenda. I'm very proud that the Office of Water has probably the most ambitious regulatory agenda that we have ever had in the history of the Office of Water. That's what other people tell me. And if you think about it, at the end of the day, when we are doing our national regulations, we're setting a public health standard for the country, and we're setting technology standards of how to achieve that public health goal. That at the end of the day is what our national regulations do. So if you think about the fact that the president has been very clear that he wants to get the lead out. He wants 100% free lead in drinking water systems. And we are, by the end of this year, going to be proposing a national lead and copper rule that reflects the president's ambition of 100%. When that regulation is finalized, think about the market opportunities that are there. Think about a Chicago, Illinois, where you have 400,000 lead service lines, and we're saying we're going to get the lead out. They're removing about 150 lines a year. What are the alternative delivery models that we can develop to help Chicago get the lead out? What are the ways that we can much more rapidly utilize technology to do inventory so we know where that is and we can be targeted with those investments? I mean, that is the kind of innovation that we need to unlock around some of the regulatory drivers that we're advancing at EPA. I think PFAS is another similar situation where we're in the process of finalizing the first ever national standard. And for those of you who provided public comment on our proposal, thank you very much. But we are in the process of finalizing that rule in the coming months. And if you think about having a national standard for multiple PFAS and how we're going to help water systems meet that public health standard, incredible opportunities around data and monitoring, incredible opportunities around new and more affordable technology solutions, deployment of those solutions in what we anticipate to be at least 15,000 water systems around the country, as well as thinking about disposal and destruction of that. That is an essential part of the whole process of removing PFAS from drinking water. So really exciting opportunities, I think, to be creative in how the public, the private, the nonprofit sector academic sector can come together to meet this moment in water. So, as I close out, and I know you all are going to be moving into an excellent day of presentations and dialogue, and I understand the conference is very focused on debate and dialogue, which is wonderful. I want to close with leaving you with the theme for Climate Week, which is we can, we will. I love that. I love that as the theme for this week. We can and we will. Because I think you all know there is no magic bullet for solving the challenges that we face around water stress in this country and not internationally. But think about the creativity and the leadership that you all represent. And we can charge ahead with that. We can. And what I also know about the water sector is you are very dedicated people. You ultimately care and have purpose in what you're doing. And so we will. We can, we will, let's just keep going. Thank you and have a wonderful conference.